Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Claire. I'm so glad that you're here today and I'm excited to be doing this video. Just like my last one, this one is going to be short and sweet and it's coming up a little bit late because it is hot in Vancouver. Not vibing with it, so I had a lot of different ideas of what I was going to do for this video, and then the heat wave hit and I was like, well, those are going out the window. Because I need something that's going to be easy to do and fun. So I settled on doing a tag, and today I wanted to do the half-year Freakout tag where I kind of go through the highs and lows of my first 6 months of reading in 2021. So without any further ado, I'm going to tag the original videos in my description, and I'll put the questions down there as well if you want to answer them in your own video. If you do, let me know. I'd love to see it. But let's jump right into it. So there's the lucky number of 13 questions, and I'm going to try and get through these as quick as possible. Okay, so the first one is the best book that you've read this year. So this one was tough because I have 5 books that I've rated a 5-star this year. For me personally, a 5-star read is something that I classify as something that really affects me, is a real wow factor to it, or that I can see being in my top books of all time. And these 5 are definitely getting up there. So we're going to go into it pretty quick here. First one is A Single Man by Christopher Isherwood. This book is fabulous. I talk about it very briefly in my previous video where I talk about Goodbye to Berlin, another Isherwood book that I love. But this book is just really short, sweet, has a melancholy aspect to it, and I just really loved this book. Next is E.M. Forster's Maurice. This is my combined copy of Room with a View, Howard's End, and Maurice. I read this one in February and really loved this book. Maurice was just really fabulous. I've read Howard's End before, and reading Maurice was just another level. So a super sweet, again, a story with a little bit of melancholy in it. But just a really lovely story. I love the way that Forster writes, and I love the way that he integrates the themes that he wants to talk about into the story, and not keeping those as 2 separate entities, but really weaving them together really well. So that's the second one, Maurice by E.M. Forster. Okay, the next one was one I was surprised to have never really gotten into until now, but I watched the movie after having failed attempts to read this book, and then fell in love with the story, and then blitzed through the book and really loved it, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I really enjoyed this book. I loved the vibes of this book. It was thought-provoking in a way that I hadn't thought it would be, but yeah, this was really fabulous. I mean, what else can you say? Really amazing. So that's that one, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Okay, and the next one, this is like kind of my crowning achievement for the first 6 months of the year. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy in the month of March. This was a big read for me, and I was really surprised to have gotten through it in the 31 days in March. This was fabulous. I mean, Tolstoy is an incredible writer. The way that he captures people in such a universal and exciting way made this book feel timeless as I was reading it. Super exciting. I loved this book. It was really amazing. That's Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Okay, and then the final one, which was probably like my favorite out of all of these, was I discovered for the first time this year, Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. This was incredible. This is right up my alley. It's about a man who kind of falls in with an aristocratic family. He becomes friends with their son and gets to know the whole family and their house, Brideshead, in the 1920s, which I've talked about it before and I'll talk about it again. Interwar fiction between 1918 and 1939 is like my favorite era of fiction, so this was really amazing, and I'd love to talk about it some more in detail, so I probably will, but that is Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. Keep going here. So the next one is the best sequel that you've read this year. I did not read a ton of sequels this year, essentially down to I've been reading the Wheel of Time series, so I've been reading those sequels, and the one that I'm actually going to talk about that was the best sequels that I've read this year is Heartstopper. So this month I finally got my hands on volumes 2, 3, and 4 and was able to read all the way through them, and they're just such a lovely story. really well done. I mean, the art marries so well with the dialogue and the characters. Easy to read, but exciting and engaging, and I was really appreciative of the tone of this book. Like, it's definitely written for teenagers, but for me, as someone a little older, it didn't feel like too childish or like it was talking down to its audience. It just felt really real, really engaging, and even as someone who's no longer a teenager, it still felt relevant to me. So it was really, they were really amazing. I would encourage you to check out the Heartstopper series. So, next question, number 3, is a new release that you've wanted to read, but you haven't yet. And this next one, I'm really excited. I just got this book a few weeks ago, and that book is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And I'm really excited. This book came out in March of 2020. So this is the most recent book that I own. I'm really looking forward to this one. I love the story. I mean, it's funny that this is my most anticipated new read, and it takes place in 1580. So it's kind of opposite, I guess. But so yeah, really looking forward to this. That's Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. And I mean, cover, beautiful. Okie dokie. So next up, most anticipated release. So this one is hard because I don't read a lot of new releases or stuff that's like fresh off the press, mostly because I have so many other books that I want to check out that are older. I kind of changed my perspective and broadened it to like movies and TV because there's a new Persuasion adaptation coming out in 2022 sometime through Netflix, which I'm like keeping my eye on. I'm really excited about that. Persuasion is one of my favorite Austen novels, and I really love the 90s movie Persuasion, which is I think one that kind of gets forgotten a little bit, but it's really, really well done. 1995, I think. So I'm excited for that. And then the other one is, I've mentioned it before, but Wheel of Time. It's gonna feature heavily on this list because those books take up a lot of my time. But there's a Wheel of Time TV show coming out at some point eventually. I'm really looking forward to that now that I've gotten into the books. Yeah, those are my most anticipated releases. I tend to watch newer movies and TV shows versus books, so that's why I kind of turn to those for this question. Great, so hot on the tails of talking about Wheel of Time, this next one I'm also talking about Wheel of Time. So my biggest disappointment this year, you already know where this is going, but I did my video on this a couple weeks ago. The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, which is the second book in the Wheel of Time series, was probably my biggest disappointment this year because I really loved Eye of the World and was really excited to read this one, and it just fell flat for me. Mostly, you can check out my video where I talk about it more, but the basis of it was I just felt that for the size of this book, it was disappointing to not be in a terribly new spot by the end of it. It felt really samey by the end, which was kind of disappointing because I loved the characters, I love the world, and I love where the story is going now that I'm into almost through book 4. But it was disappointing to read this and feel like nothing had changed through the book. But don't worry, that was rectified because I loved book 3 and I'm really enjoying book 4. So, but this one was definitely my biggest disappointment. That's The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. Fabulous. Okay, next one. Question 6. We're powering through these. The biggest surprise this year. This one was pretty easy, actually. I was not anticipating on reading this book at all, just because it wasn't really on my radar. That book is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This one was really fabulous. I found this in one of those free little libraries, which I talked about in a previous video, and I really enjoyed this book. It was a huge surprise. I blitzed through this. I read this in one day, which is like a big deal for me. So yeah, I read right through it. It was really, really awesome. Definitely the biggest surprise for me this year, by far. Moving right along. Favorite new author. For this one, it could be either like a debut author or a new to me author. So I picked 2 new to me authors. The first one is back again. It's Robert Jordan. I'm really loving the Wheel of Time series. I think that they're so amazing. And despite my issues with the book at some points, even in the way that it's written, the core of the story and the depth and the breadth of the story is amazing. Like, it feels like I'm reading about a real place. Like, that's how fully realized this world is. So yeah, the way that he has created this world and has presented it is really amazing. So I'm really loving his work. And then the second one is Toni Morrison. I've read 2 Morrison books this year. I read Home in March, I believe, and then I read Sula last month, and just, yeah, really fell in love with the way that Morrison writes. The atmosphere, I think, is what stands out most to me. The atmosphere of her writing, the community that she creates, and the characters, how that all flows together. Really, really fabulous. So super looking forward to continuing my journey into the other things that Morrison has written. I'm really looking forward to Beloved, which I have on my shelf and hoping to get to soon. So those are my 2 authors that have definitely been the most exciting this year for me to discover. Fabulous. Okay, newest fictional crush. This one was tough because obviously I can't pick Mr. Darcy because I've read Pride and Prejudice like 100 times, and only one of those times was this year, so it doesn't count. But I found a couple. I read North and South this year by Elizabeth Gaskell, and Mr. Thornton was really great. I mean, obviously probably wouldn't jive with him because he's like a 19th century industrialist, but you know, the way that the romance progressed, I was definitely like into it and excited and having a good time reading that. So that was really amazing. And the other one, I'm really vibing with my boy Perrin from Wheel of Time. Womp womp, sorry to bring it back again, but it's like consumed like 50% of what I read right now. But Perrin is really amazing. I always love the kind of, you know, tough skin with a heart of gold style character. So yeah, really enjoying that. So those are my 2 characters. Next one, moving along, newest favorite character. This one was really tough. Mostly because I just couldn't think of someone who really stood out to me as like favorite character. But I figured out 2, again, was from Anna Karenina. I really fell in love with the Obolenskis, Stefan and Dolly. So Anna's older brother and his wife. I felt like they were such a great dynamic, so smart to be included in the main characters. I thought they provided so much conversation and discussion for me, like just thinking about their dynamic and things like that. And what a great foil to the other characters, like Vronsky and Anna and Alexei. So really, really loved them. And even though I knew I wasn't supposed to be liking Stefan in terms of his like character and what he does to Dolly, the way that Tolstoy wrote it was just like, you could tell why everyone around him loved him. He was so enigmatic. I'm talking like he's a real person. That's just the way that Tolstoy writes. He felt like a real person. They both did, and I think that was what's so charming about them, was I know those people in real life, and I feel like I know those characters personally, almost, after having read this book. So question number 10. Okay, so a book that made you cry. I don't cry really easily in books. I mean, I cry in real life, but for some reason books don't really get me. But I did have 2 books that were definitely pretty melancholic, and one that I know a lot of people cried reading, but I didn't. Mostly I think because I was like anticipating it to be sad, so when it actually came around I wasn't that bothered by it. The first is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I know a lot of people cry at the end of this book, but I really enjoyed the ending and didn't feel like it was super sad, and more just a really great resolution to the end of the story. Melancholic in a sense, but not a tearjerker per se for me. So that's that one, Song of Achilles. Ooh, look at that cover. Next, the other one, I love this book. This book was really, really amazing. And that is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This one, again, was not one that I like cried, but it was just a really kind of melancholy story, and tragic in an exciting way to read. Like, it was a new take. It felt really fresh and really exciting. So, but yeah, that's The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. All right, books that made you happy. So I had a really great reading 6 months, reading half of the year, and a lot of the books that I read made me happy. They were really, really amazing. But the next one is one that made me happy, I think, in a way the other ones didn't. And so the book that I chose was Grounded, which is a Star Trek novel. This was the first one I've ever read. And I think this one just made me happy because I was excited to be back in that world. I was excited to be able to explore the characters more. And yeah, it was just fun to find this new kind of experience of reading these books as opposed to watching the show. So yeah, that made me happy in a nerdy kind of way, but that's the one that made me happy. Okay, so question 12. The most beautiful book you've bought or received. Okay. I try not to be a cover buyer, but it's hard when there's so many beautiful books out there. These ones are not, I would say, beautiful in the sense of like leather-bound, expensive ones, but they're just ones that I love the cover of and I think are so amazing. And one thing I love about reading fantasy is the drawn covers of them, especially like the really retro ones. So the first book that I would classify as my most beautiful book that I bought, or one of them anyways, is I've got this, one of the original printings of The Eye of the World. This is the first book in the Wheel of Time series. This just has a really fabulous drawn, painted cover, and then a really great inside one there. And then the back of the book is a continuation all the way across, but it's really nice because it's such an early copy that there's none of the later sequels on the back, so just really loving that. So this was an exciting find to find this secondhand. Okay, the next one, most beautiful one, this was a brand new buy, and I've talked about this book before, and this book is the kind of book where I see it on my shelf and I just like taking it off just to look at it. Just so silly. And that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I have not had a chance to read this book yet, but I talked about it in my summer TBR video, which you can check out, but I'm hoping to read it. You guessed it, this summer. But I just love the way that this looks. The combo matte and glossy finish, the shimmer and shine of the dragon and the typeface, and yeah, just everything about it. The yellow and the blue, fabulous. So this book looks great and I love it. And the last question is the top books to read by the end of the year. So my next 6 months of TBR is a whole myriad of books, and Beloved, which I talked about before, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, Little Women, Mansfield Park, The Once and Future King, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So yeah, there's a whole list. I've got so many that I'm wanting to get to, and some that are even on this list that are in my TBR in my head. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I had a fabulous first 6 months of reading, and I think I'm going to end this video here. I'm gonna go get something cool to drink, cool down again, edit this video, and I will be talking to you guys again on Saturday. So if you like this video, leave a like, comment if you've read any of these books, or if you're planning to read any of them, or if you have any recommendations. I'd love to hear them. Let me know how your first 6 months of reading or watching or listening are going, and if you like the content I'm creating, subscribe and come hang out. So I upload every Tuesday and Saturday, and having a really good time. So I will see you on the flip side. Bye guys.